What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Heart Over Height episode. Today, we're going to be going over teams that either are going to exceed expectations or there's too much heat. They need to get out of the kitchen. So if you do enjoy this content, do me a huge favor. Smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Comment down below what teams you think will exceed expectations and have too much heat to handle. So without further ado, let's get right on into this. So the way this works is I'm going to do 5 teams that could possibly exceed expectation here. And then I'm going to give you 5 teams that there could be a little too much pressure on them. It might be time to not necessarily alter things, but there might just be too much expectation for them to exceed in the future. So first team that I want to talk about with exceeding expectations is a team, young, upcoming roster. It is Orlando. Now, Orlando's a team I've mentioned a few times on this channel. They're a team that, honestly, they have all the pieces put together. They just need to get some more shooting in there. The defense is great. Paolo Banchero is the most underrated #1 overall pick, as you guys have heard me talk about before. Orlando is a dangerous team. They brought in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I think that they could do some serious damage, especially with another year of Paolo Banchero just getting better. I believe Franz Wagner as well is going to be better for this roster. As he had the offseason to play with Germany, it just kind of, I think we're going to see a big jump for some guys that did play in the Olympics, i.e. Anthony Edwards, for example, like I talk about with the sponge and everything. But with Orlando, I think they've got it. They've got a lot of solid depth there. Yes, they might have too many guards, need to figure out that situation there, but and they might have too much depth in the guard position to where they could be making some moves. I do think that they need another center. I think Wendell Carter might be a little bit undersized, especially when you're going up against teams like Philly, Denver, the Celtics, for example, where they have taller bigs. You're going to need somebody that can, at least compete defensively against those guys. Yes, Wendell Carter does play a lot bigger than he is, but I think having a backup 7-footer isn't a bad option. Going and getting a guy on the market, a Jonas Valanciunas type that'll be available, might not be bad for you, especially since he can stretch the floor. So I could theoretically see Orlando exceeding expectation. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's just a possibility that I could see them exceeding that expectation. Next up here, we do have a team going into the too much heat category. Now, this team, they are a squad that has everything. They've got depth. They've got, dynamic guard. They got the dynamic wings, decent bigs. Everything that you look for in a championship roster, this team has it. And that is the reason that they won a championship this year. It is the Boston Celtics. I know I'm a Celtics fan. I try not to throw bias in these videos, and I try not to throw the opposite way as well. But as a fan of the roster, of course, I think it top to bottom, it is one of the best rosters in basketball, of course. The thing is we do understand that there is this championship hangover that can happen. You don't see too many back-to-backs and everything. And with all the other teams around them getting better, i.e. Philly, i.e., Dallas even got better, that they're, theoretically they got better. Same thing with New York got better. The Bucks are, they should be better this year. There's a lot of rosters around them that did get better. Orlando got better, and you have to go through a lot of those guys in order to get to the finals. So with the Celtics, I'm not saying that they can't repeat. I really hope they do, of course, being a Celtics fan. Of course, I hope that they repeat. But what I'm saying is that there could be so much expectation and so much pressure for them to be great that they might be a little slumped, that they might have a tougher time if they aren't the 1 seed and they have to go through Philly and New York, or Philly, New York, and Orlando for example. There's just honestly there's opportunity here for the Celtics. Everyone is expecting the Celtics to be really good. There is that flip side where you could see a championship hangover here. Now, again, just like I said with Orlando, it's not that I'm expecting them to fall down and crash. I'm just saying that these are 5 teams for both sides that can exceed expectations and can have too much heat on them. So now we'll flip it. We'll do another team that does have too much heat. That next team is the Denver Nuggets. Denver is just a team that they lost one of their championship key pieces there. You look at the Lakers, for example, when they won their bubble championship. The very next year, they traded KCP and Kyle Kuzma, two guys on their roster that legitimately were huge pieces in helping them win a championship. Same thing with Denver. They lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in free agency, and that is going to hurt them a lot because there's a gap. There's a clear gap on their roster right at the shooting guard position. Whether it's Christian Braun, whether it's Strother, whether it's Westbrook, we don't know. But as of right now, it is just clear as day there's a hole at the shooting guard. But the other positions, point guard, small forward, power forward, center, looks pretty solid. It's just, is that enough to win you a championship, especially as the Thunder got better and Dallas got better, just as I talked about. There's, the West got better too. There's a lot of teams that got better. And if you got worse, if you took a step back, that's where your expectation, because you have Jokic, because you have Jamal, because you have Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. is championship now. That's where there might be too much heat on them to succeed, especially since they couldn't get past Minnesota. Next team I want to talk about is a team that I think can exceed expectations. They made a move in the offseason that really addressed an issue that they had, which was not a great ball handler, facilitator for them, and it is the New Orleans Pelicans. Yes, they had CJ McCollum there, but he is a 2. Having DeJounte on this roster is going to help them out a lot, I think, by moving the ball around, playing, just getting guys open shots and getting guys better shot selection. I do believe that they will move off of Brandon Ingram, and that's going to help them out in the long run. I think that the Trey Murphy or Herb Jones that fills in there is going to be better for them than having Brandon Ingram. It's just less is more for their roster, in my opinion, especially since you just went and got DeJounte. I do think we're going to have another good season out of Zion. I think he is learning how to adapt his game as well to play in this league, just as someone like Paolo Banchero did, and he's learned to adapt, and he's just done it at a quicker rate than Zion. Zion also has played less games because he hasn't been as healthy, but Zion himself, he was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. He is somebody that can tear it up night in and night out. He's just got to adjust his game when the defense does throw something at him that does alter his game. He needs to be able to adjust that. That has been his biggest problem. Now, I think that they will be better this year. They do have a hole at that center position, which I do think that they'll address somewhere around that trade deadline for Brandon Ingram. And that's where they could exceed expectation. I could see them being like a 6th, 7th seed and upsetting that 1 or 2 seed that's there because they end up at the trade deadline making a move and adjusting and addressing that center position. Next up here, we'll talk about another team that is going to exceed expectations or could exceed expectations, and it is the San Antonio Spurs. They're a team on this list that I think a lot of people have high expectations for Victor Wembanyama specifically, but not necessarily the rest of the roster per se. I think with young and upcoming players like Devin Vassell and Stephon Castle, it's going to help them out a lot. And I do think that Chris Paul is going to be playing a lot better this year than when he was with the Warriors. Because when he was with the Warriors, when he's with the young team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, for example, back in his career, he was able to excel and get these guys to flourish and take their game to a whole nother level. And I think the same thing's going to happen. I'm just really excited to see a guy who can play pick and roll with Victor Wembanyama. And we know at a bare minimum, Chris Paul is going to be able to do that. So that is something I look forward to a lot, especially with the surrounding pieces in Devin Vassell. And I'm really excited to see what Stephon Castle can do defensively for this roster. Next up here, I do have a team that they made an adjustment. They made it deep in the playoffs, they made it to the finals, and they made an adjustment, and it's the Dallas Mavericks. I think there's too much heat on them. I think that I have a big feeling that Dallas here, they brought in Klay Thompson, and he just it reminds me of that guy that just spends his entire career somewhere, tries it on one other roster, and it just doesn't work as well as it used to, i.e. Scottie Pippen when he went to the Portland Trailblazers. Or you look at, other players who have done that. D-Wade when he went to the Bulls. Somebody like that. Michael Jordan when he went to the Wizards. It's just like, we wish you would have just stayed, a Warrior for life. I understand his situation and why he left, and I'm not disrespecting that at all. I'm just saying that that's the feeling I get from this. Is, it seems like he might not be the guy, and like, even with the Warriors, even with the Mavericks here, they're going to have a high expectation of him being able to shoot the three ball at a high level. And I just don't know if he's got that capability to fill in that defensive role of Derrick Jones Jr. So that is why I think that there might be too much heat on the Dallas Mavericks since they made that finals run, and they unfortunately will just, might fall short of that this year. Next up here, we have a team that is young, upcoming, and they have a mixture of young talent as well as that veteran leadership there. It is the Houston Rockets for exceeding expectations. They are a team that I'm just really excited for. That bench is something that just intrigues me a lot because you got Cam Whitmore and you have Reed Sheppard. That's super intriguing in my opinion because Reed Sheppard, just the little bit that we saw from Summer League itself, he looked like a possible Steph Curry-esque player. Now, I'm not saying that he is Steph Curry or he will be Steph Curry, but he's somebody that I'm interested to watch how his game develops, and I could see him jumping into that starting lineup pretty quickly. If not the first season, maybe the second season, something like that. But then you look at their starting lineup. I think Amen Thompson is going to take a decent leap here where you might flourish with him playing the three a little bit. So you have Freddie, you have Reed Sheppard, and then you have Amen Thompson if Reed Sheppard does go into that starting lineup. Same thing with Cam Whitmore. I'm excited about his offensive game. I don't know if he necessarily fits this roster, just like Jalen Green. Kind of doesn't fit the roster per se, but I do think that around the trade deadline, they're going to address whether or not Jalen Green fits the roster. Same thing with Sengun. Sengun is somebody that he's a phenomenal center, and I know a lot of teams could use him. And so if the season's not going exactly how Houston wants, and they need to make an adjustment to try and make a playoff push, then Sengun or Jalen Green could be out the door. I expect that. So the next team here that there could be too much heat on them. It is a team that they brought in a small adjustment just because they couldn't make too much. They couldn't make a big deal. It is the Phoenix Suns. Now, bringing in Tyus Jones, what I mean by small adjustment is he was so cheap. 1 year, $3 million deal is nothing, of course. But they couldn't make any big deals to go get a big-name point guard. I think that they did great on that. I question the fit of Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant. I question on if Bradley Beal is going to play a lot. A roster like this needs time to develop chemistry and cohesion, and if you're not on the court, you can't do that. So the three of them need to be able to find a way to be on the court together. I do think that there might be too much heat on this roster, just as there's so much money that's dumped into these three players, and it's like if it doesn't work, that's just a huge L to your future, per se. Do I think that Phoenix could actually flip this and exceed expectations? Absolutely, I do. I think that they are a team that I consider putting in both. But I do think that there's just more pressure on them than there is they need to exceed expectations kind of thing. So last on the exceeding expectations, it is a team that didn't make too many moves in the offseason. They're a team that's just super interesting as far as what they could possibly do. It is the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors themselves have developed a nice little young core here with Emmanuel Quickley, with RJ Barrett, and with Scotty Barnes. And then having a supporting cast around Grady Dick and him having another year in the league, as well as Jakob Poeltl. You're just kind of I'm intrigued on watching them. I could see them being a fun team to watch on NBA League Pass. They could be one of those teams that's not going to get a whole lot of TNT games or whatever, but they're going to be a team that you could tune in if you have League Pass to watching them because they might be young, exciting. And they might honestly be like in Orlando where they could exceed those expectations. And if they make 6, 7, 8 seed, they could look to upset one of those top dogs there, as they do have some solid pieces where we saw RJ Barrett being the number 2 option for Canada. If he plays like he did for Canada, that's a different beast right there. Then you look at, like, Scotty Barnes is obviously the guy over in Toronto. I'm just excited about the jump that these young guys are going to take, or they could take, and that's where I wanted to put them in that exceeding expectations category. All right, the last team to wrap up this video is the Philadelphia 76ers. The Philadelphia 76ers here are an interesting team because they have all the pieces in the world to compete against those top dogs, against the Celtics, against the Knicks, and everything like that, right? The problem is the 76ers tend to choke in those big moments, i.e. Joel Embiid tends to, not shy away from it, but not perform to the level we expect him to perform at. I think that I like their roster that has been built, with Maxey, with Paul George, with Joel Embiid. The huge question marks I have is, are we going to see a healthy season out of Joel Embiid to the point where he can play deep into the playoffs? And I hope that what they do is they kind of almost rest him during the regular season so that we can watch him during the playoffs, so that we can see a full, thresholded postseason with Joel Embiid, because you always know that there is something there that he's going to get some sort of back tweak or something is going to be bothering him, and he's either going to play through it and not perform to the level that we expect, or he's not going to play at all, and that's not what we want. Of course, we want the best possible rosters to be playing against each other, and we want them all to be fully healthy. That's, of course, what we want as NBA fans. I don't want to see a Embiid-less 76ers play against the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, or a Jalen Brunson-less Knicks play against the 76ers in the Eastern Conference Finals either. So, all right, well, before we wrap this all up, what I did want to talk about is I want to know what you guys think in the comments down below about these 10 teams right here. I'm willing to do the rest of the teams as well, just doing a whole list of too much heat or exceeding expectations kind of thing. But I just need to know what you guys think about in the comments about these 5 for the exceeding, and then the 5 for the too much heat. So if you guys did enjoy this video, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below on what team you agree with, what you disagree with. Without further ado, it's been another Heart Over Height episode, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.